Moscow, March 1930. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, and a sound starts to roll across the city. It's this low, resonant hum, a vibration you feel deep in your bones more than you actually hear with your ears. It's the kind of frequency that makes the water in a glass ripple and the windows gently hum. And it was the very last time anyone would ever hear.
That sound, which was measured at a pure 112 hertz, was the final toll of the Kremlin bells. By dawn, workers with cutting torches were already arriving. The orders came from the top, signed by Stalin himself, and they were crystal clear. Destroy them. Not sell them off, not put them in storage. Destroy them. And within 72 hours, that ancient bronze was just liquid, its unique frequency silenced forever.
And this wasn't just some one-off event. Oh no. This exact scene played out at 17,000 other churches all across the Soviet Union between 1929 and 1939. An entire acoustic landscape was being systematically erased from existence. But the official reason they gave the public? Well, it just didn't quite add up.
Publicly, the story was that this was all part of an atheist campaign, repurposing old religious junk for new industrial production. But when you look at the internal orders, they were weirdly specific. They didn't just say get rid of the bells. They targeted bells cast before 1800, bells of a certain size, and most importantly, bells that produced a very, very specific range of sound.
So how did they know which ones to target? Well, in 1929, a metallurgist in Leningrad was given a top-secret assignment to survey the city's bells. He didn't just record their weight and size, he recorded their resonant frequency. And a really clear pattern started to emerge. The bells cast before the mid-1700s, they consistently produced these pure, low frequencies, somewhere between 105 and 120 hertz, and the sound just hung in the air forever. The newer bells, on the other hand, had frequencies that were all over the place and faded really quickly. And this is where the theory really clicks into place. When the official confiscation list came out, every single bell he had identified in that low-frequency range was marked for immediate destruction. The argument is that the Soviet state wasn't just hunting religious symbols, it was hunting a specific acoustic signature. So that raises the big question, right? Why this frequency? What on earth was so threatening about a sound between 100 and 130 hertz that an entire government would mobilize to wipe it out? The answer, as it turns out, seems to lie in our own biology. The key frequency right in the middle of that range seems to be 112 hertz. And according to this theory, we know from a lab assistant's diary that back in 1928, a Soviet delegation secretly met with German acoustic researchers. They weren't interested in music at all. They asked specifically about the biological effects of sustained low frequencies on human consciousness. And this slide basically shows what they were supposedly after. Modern research, like a 2016 study from the University of Helsinki, is often used by theorists to back up what the Soviets might have suspected. Exposing people to a 112 hertz tone produces real, measurable, positive changes in the body. It lowers cortisol, the stress hormone. It boosts alpha brain waves, which are linked to calm focus. It can even improve how well you think. It's almost like a meditative state that you can induce in someone passively just by having them listen. And that right there is where the political motive becomes just chillingly clear. This quote supposedly comes from a foreman who was overseeing a bell's destruction. A young worker asked him why they couldn't just ring the bell one last time, and he apparently explained that when that specific bell rang, people became too calm, like they're not afraid anymore. And as he put it so bluntly, the state can't have that. Now, here is what proponents of this theory call the smoking gun. It's a supposedly declassified 1929 memo from the NKVD, the Soviet secret police, and it explicitly calls these bells acoustic resistance mechanisms. The memo is said to claim that daily exposure to these sounds led to lower compliance with Tsarist authority and higher rates of independent thought. The recommendation, allegedly approved by Stalin himself, was their complete and total elimination. You might be thinking, okay, this is just some uniquely Soviet paranoia, but the evidence suggests this was a synchronized international campaign. This war on sound actually crossed ideological borders. Just take a look at this timeline. The theory points out that the USSR kicks off its program in 1929. Okay, 4 years later, Nazi Germany starts confiscating the exact same types of bells. Then, in 1936, Fascist Italy, and get this, both sides of the Spanish Civil War, who were bitter enemies, started doing the exact same thing. So the question is, how could all these rival powers be united on this one very specific mission? How is that even possible?
Well, the theory points to a 1927 conference in Geneva as the coordinating event. Now, the official minutes for the session on the acoustic properties of architectural elements have mysteriously gone missing, but theorists point to the private notes of a French delegate, which supposedly reveal that a Soviet delegate presented research calling these old bells acoustic weapons against state power, and argue they had to be eliminated by any state that required population control. 2 years later, the destructions began.
So that brings us to an even bigger question. Who actually made these incredible instruments? This was a technology that blended advanced metallurgy with a deep understanding of neurobiology, and it was centuries ahead of its time. When you compare the ancient bells to modern ones, at least to one in this narrative, the difference is just stark. Modern bells? They're a simple bronze alloy. But analysis of fragments from the older bells allegedly shows they were made with a bronze alloy that had these incredibly precise, trace amounts of silver and gold mixed in. The theory is that the precious metals weren't just for decoration. They were a key part of an acoustic engineering formula, designed to produce that one pure, sustained frequency. And we actually have historical records, like this journal from a 16th century bellcaster, which theorists say points to where this knowledge came from. He talks about mysterious traveling teachers, calling them Eastern Masters. They came from a land that old maps just label as Tartaria. According to this view, they taught a technology that the local craftsmen thought was just superstition, but they had to admit it was actually a form of physics they just couldn't comprehend. So the great bells may be gone, but the silencing of this frequency isn't just a historical event. The pattern of suppression, believe it or not, continues right into our modern world. Proponents of this theory claim that scientists who try to study the biological effects of 112 Hz today run into the same invisible walls. They point to examples where the Helsinki researchers had their expansion grant denied, a German lab was shut down right after beginning similar work, and a British study has been stuck in ethics approval for over 3 years. To those who believe the theory, this isn't a coincidence. It's a modern form of suppression using bureaucratic roadblocks. So after piecing together this whole century-long story of destruction and silence, we're left with a series of really profound and pretty unsettling questions. First off, who were these Tartarian masters? Who had an understanding of human neurology and acoustic resonance so advanced that they could engineer instruments for population-scale well-being? I mean, that's a technology we're only just starting to rediscover now. Second, who had the kind of influence to coordinate this acoustic purge across nations that were literally at war with each other? What power could possibly convince rival dictators, from Stalin's Russia to Hitler's Germany, that their single greatest common enemy was a sound that made their citizens calm and clear-headed? And finally, maybe the most important question this whole theory asks us to think about today: why does this suppression allegedly continue? The authoritarian regimes of the 20th century are gone, yet even now the theory claims any research into this beneficial frequency is quietly but very effectively shut down. 90 years after the bells were first silenced, what are they still so afraid we might hear?